the shared Shabbos book. We're on page 91. And the next step, after the land was plowed, they put in the seeds grew. Now it came time for the harvest. Your name? Sarah. So the next step with the herbs and plants that we used for dye was then to cut them, reap them, to do the harvest. That is the Av Malacha. The Av Malacha is cutting it with its special tool that is used for reaping. If it is the grains, so it would be a sickle. And then you have also in this category, a Torah prohibition would be picking fruit by hand. That would be the normal way of picking the fruit. Shaking a tree to make fruit fall off. That is done with the olives. We actually have a special machine that's a shaker. It shakes the tree and the olives come off. That's the normal way of removing the olives from the olive tree. Next page. Now, we explained in our last class that a flower pot with holes on the ground is considered as if it is growing from the ground itself. And then removing the flower pot, placing it on a shelf, which blocks it from receiving sustenance from the ground, that is if you had cut it from its place of growth, and that is a Torah prohibition. Number 4 is an interesting category, and that would be the definition of this malacha of kotzer would be removing something alive from its place of growth. So if it would be plants, the plants would be alive. Here we have a fish. Its place of growth is in the water. Removing it would be included according to some authorities. Others say that it goes into another category, which would be shchita, which would be slaughtering it, taking it, removing the life of something that is living. So it would not apply to plants. We don't consider that we've slaughtered a plant. We do consider it that we're reaping, taking it from its place of growth. As far as a fish is concerned, some will also consider that you're taking something from its place of growth, and that would include the fish. The rabbinic prohibitions would be taking a honeycomb from the hive, to take a flower pot without holes where it does not get a sustenance from the ground, and taking that off the ground would be rabbinic. And now we have number 3, which is climbing a tree. Climbing a tree is something that we are concerned that it's rabbinically forbidden to climb a tree, make use of a tree directly, sit on a tree, and that would be because we are concerned that one may then remove that which is growing on the tree. It's a fruit tree, picking a fruit. It's not a fruit tree. We are concerned maybe someone might tear off a branch, tear off the leaves. So therefore, there was a restriction of making use of the tree, and it's pretty detailed, which we will be going on in our page 93. So climbing a tree, and then the use of an animal. Now that goes into 2 categories. The Torah specifically says in the 10 Commandments that you, your sons, your daughters, your animals, and your servants should rest on the Shabbos day. So therefore, a Jewish person could not have his animal do any work, whether it's pulling a wagon or whether it is doing any plowing attached to the plowing shares. So these are forbidden because an animal is not, a Jewish person is not allowed to allow his animal to do work. Even if he rents it out to a non-Jewish person, his animal is not allowed to do work. So here we have also making use of an animal. So here we are placing an object on them, and the animal is going to pull the object. That would be a prohibition of having the animal do work. It would not necessarily go into this category. But in addition to that, we also have that people usually would have a switch to urge the animal on, and that would be in this category where one might come to tear or to break off a branch from a tree. Now, number 5 is an interesting rabbinic safeguard, and that would be smelling fruit that is attached to the tree. What is our concern? Smelling a nice apple from an apple tree. What would be the next step? Smells so delicious, one might forget that it's Shabbos, and off goes the apple, which is this malacha. So smelling fruit that are attached to the tree is forbidden on Shabbos, rabbinically. However, what's the story with flowers? Go into a botanical garden, there's such beautiful flowers growing, the roses, and what would be the ruling there? Are you allowed to smell flowers that are attached and that are growing? Yes, no? Answer is no. I'm asking yet. Yes, no? You are permitted to smell the flowers that are growing because I know, but the same thing is with the fruit. The fruit is attached to the tree, we can't smell the fruit. The flowers are attached to the ground, we could smell the flowers. What's the difference between the two?
It's not edible.
Oh, but so we're assuming that when you go to a garden, you're going to see growing flowers. Not necessarily you're going to tear off a flower and put it into your hair. We don't assume that. So if that would be the normal practice, then it would be on the same category. So we're assuming that when it comes to flowers, you're going to have the flowers continue to grow and beautify the garden. You're not going to remove the flowers. However, with fruit, which are normally made for eating, you'll see a delicious fruit. You might forget it's Shabbos and pick the fruit. So smelling fruit that are attached to the tree, so that is forbidden rabbinically on Shabbos. Smelling flowers that are attached to the ground are permissible. And if someone is going to smell the flowers for their fragrance, what would they have to do before they do so? Make a bracha. What's the bracha for smelling flowers? What category would it go into? So we do have, when Shabbos is over, by Havdalah, there is the smelling of the spices. So that gets a bracha, borei minei bisamim. With things that grow, so borei minei bisamim is a generic bracha. Just as we say, shahakol niya bidbaro is a generic bracha that would cover any food that we eat, would go into that bracha. The same is also borei minei bisamim, who created different types of smelling spices for plants that are tree-like, that have a strong stalk. It's the definition of tree-like is not the same as when we make borei pri ha'etz on fruit. Definition of a fruit tree has its own definition. It has to have a trunk, it has to have branches, it has to have the fruit growing from the branches, also lasting throughout the season. But when it comes to smelling the tree-like plants, which would be like a rose, would go into that category. It's strong, it's not grass-like. So you make borei atzei bisamim. Eitz is a tree, atzei is plural. So if you're going to be smelling plants that grow from tree-like, a tree-like plant would get a bracha borei atzei bisamim. If it's grass-like, Esev is a grass covering. So isbei is plural. You would say borei isbei bisamim. So if you're smelling the lilies, the ones that are grass-like, it has its own bracha, so you'll have that in your other classes when it comes to the brachas for spices. But so if someone is going to be smelling flour on that's attached, he would make, depending on what kind of flour it is. Okay, back to now as far as the trees are concerned, so we've learned that climbing a tree is rabbinically forbidden, but also many other details are connected with the tree. Tree is something that one could not make direct use of a tree. However, touching a tree, are you permitted to touch a tree?
Yes.
So a tree goes into the category of muktzah. The tree is muktzah. Are you allowed to touch muktzah?
Can you like lean
So-
up against the tree?
So here we go. The question is, but as far as muktzah is concerned, let's take, for instance, your stovetop. Your stovetop is an item that's used for cooking, which makes it muktzah. Are you allowed to touch a stovetop on Shabbos? Your dryer is an item that is designated for drying clothes. It is muktzah. Are you allowed to use your dryer in your kitchen and make it as your countertop?
Yeah.
So what's the definition of, what are the restrictions on muktzah?
Moving it.
No. Are you allowed to touch a pen? That is muktzah. So why is it I am permitted to touch the dryer top that is my countertop, and I'm not allowed to touch the pen? What's the difference between, they're both muktzah? The difference is, if I touch the pen, what will happen when I touch the pen? What will happen to the pen? It will move. I'm not allowed to move muktzah. I am permitted to touch muktzah. So therefore, when it comes to the same thing as therefore the countertop, that's your dryer, I'm permitted to touch if it's balanced.
So you can't touch like a weak tree.
That's correct. That's correct. So it has to be a strong tree that's not going to move by my touching it. Another thing that you cannot do with a tree would be, what happens if are you allowed to sit on the grass? Okay, even though you're allowed to walk on grass, sit on grass, you are permitted. Now, am I allowed to sit on the grass and that's next to a tree? And am I permitted to put my weight on the tree and like lean back on the tree itself?
Strong tree, yeah.
Strong tree, no. The answer is, you're not allowed to make use of a tree. Just as you're not allowed to climb the tree, you're not allowed to make use of a tree. But you are, so therefore the restriction would be, you're not permitted to put your full weight on the tree. What is the definition of full weight? If you're leaning against it and the tree were to be removed, what would happen to you? Would you fall over? If you're not going to fall over when the tree is removed, you are permitted to touch it if it is not going to move because of you. So now, what happens if you have a pebble in your shoe and you want to take it out? You're not going to sit down on the ground. First of all, how are you going to? It's on one foot. You're outside, so you would have to balance yourself on one foot while you remove your shoe, unless you're going to bend down. So you have now a tree. Are you allowed to put yourself on the tree and remove your shoe, shake the pebble up, and put it back? So again, the question is, how much pressure are you putting on the tree? Are you leaning against it completely? In other words, if you were to take away the tree, would you fall over? So then you're not allowed to. If you are just using it to balance yourself, which means that if you would take away the tree, you'd still be standing, then you are permitted to do so. So a tree is muktzah. The definition of muktzah for a tree would be, you're allowed to touch it as long as you're not going to be moving it or you're not putting your full weight on it. And if you were to take away the tree, you would lose your balance and fall over. So, this is on page 93. Now, climbing on a tree. So, not allowed to climb there. If you climbed on Friday, you're allowed to get off. If you climbed on Shabbos, So it matters you did it deliberately or not deliberately. So that would make a difference. Now, here we go to the next step. Not making use of a tree, and that would be to put something on a branch. So if you have your garden that's enclosed, and you want to, it's a warm summer day, you're wearing a jacket, you want to put take your jacket off, you're in the garden, it's a place that you can carry, you want to put the jacket somewhere. Are you allowed to put it on a branch of a tree? And the answer is no, because you're not allowed to make use of the tree. If it is there before Shabbos, you're not allowed to take it off the tree. So making use of the tree. And again, because the concern was, once you're going to the tree, the next step might be that you'll forget. And as you're with the branch, taking your jacket off, take off some leaves, take off a branch. So this was all a concern. Now, they were so strict about this that something that is attached to the tree can also not be made use of. So if you have a tree, a branch, before Shabbos, you put a basket on the branch. So this now basket becomes an extension to the tree. So whatever you're not allowed to do to the branch, you cannot do to the basket, and therefore you cannot take the basket off the branch. You cannot put something into the basket. That all would be restrictions. So that whatever is placed on the tree becomes an extension to the tree. So if you have a ladder that's leaning against the tree, so that would be considered an extension to the tree. Now, how far do you go with these extensions? So now we have the tree, an extension to the tree. So there's a hook on the tree. So the tree has all the prohibitions of a tree. The hook that's on the tree also has all of the prohibitions of a tree. Now to put something on the hook, take something off the hook. However, if before Shabbos, you had an extension to the extension, so you are permitted to make use of that. So what does that mean? Does everyone know what a hammock is? Hammock. So a hammock is, you have two trees, you have a portable bed. Well, how would we call does everyone know what a hammock is?
Yeah.
Everyone knows? Okay, Anna, you know what a hammock is? Okay, how would we describe a hammock? You have two trees, you have like a netting that's like a bed-like. You tie it onto the two trees and you lie down and relax on this hammock. So,
Yeah, I know.
okay, do you know what a hammock is? Do you know what a hammock is? No, she does not know. Okay, would you show it to Chaya? Okay, there we go. With an A, amaka or? Oh, hammock. Okay, it's just the same. Hammock, and you just have to say hammock. Okay. Just like in Eretz Yisrael, you say telefonia. So that goes about the same thing. Okay, so now we have a hammock, and so therefore, when are you allowed to use it? So we have the tree, the hook, and then the hammock is going to be attached to the hook. So it's a third extension. You are permitted to make use of the third extension to the tree. So you are permitted to use the hammock on Shabbos if, when you get into the hammock, the trees are not going to fold. So it's strong trees. You have the third extension. You are permitted to make use of it. You're not allowed to take it, put it on or off the hook, because then you're making direct use of the extension. But you are permitted to use something that is extended. The same thing would also be, you have these swings, also the country swings. You usually have a tire. So you are permitted to say, you can't, if it's tied directly onto the branch, you're not allowed to make use of it, because then it's an extension to the tree. If there's a hook on the branch, you hooked up your swing before Shabbos, you're permitted to do so. The same would also be with our clothesline. If it's tied on directly to the tree, so the clothesline is an extension. You're not allowed to put clothes on it, take clothes off. We're speaking, it's dry, even if it's dry, because then it's extension. But if it's on a hook, then you are permitted to make use of the line. Okay. Sometimes you have a tree that was cut down, and you have a tree stump. At what point are you allowed to use the tree stump as your chair? Are you allowed to use the tree stump as a chair? When is it considered a tree that you're restricted? When is it considered a part of the ground? So you have that on page 95, the bottom of the page. So anything that is higher than 3 tefachim, 3 handbreadths, which goes to 24 centimeters, 9.5 inches. So then it's considered a tree. Anything that's less than that is considered a part of the ground, and you are permitted to sit on the stump of the tree that is lower than our 24 centimeters or 9.5 inches, which is pretty low. Now, on page 97, we have the fruit that fell off the tree. It's on the ground. So whatever was growing on the tree, when it came Shabbos began, our muktzah was not meant to be used, but whatever cannot be used when Shabbos before Shabbos when Shabbos begins is muktzah for the rest of the Shabbos. So the same would be with your Shabbos candles. So the Shabbos candles are muktzah if they were lit for that Shabbos. So that would include the Shabbos candles, the Shabbos candelabra, and also if you have a tray that's serving your leichter, your Shabbos lights, so that also becomes muktzah. And if you have it on a table that's exclusively for the candles, so that too becomes muktzah. So you have an extension. So whatever is muktzah when Shabbos begins is muktzah for the rest of the Shabbos. However, we're going to be learning about the rules of muktzah, that if it is something that is usually used for forbidden action, but you want to use it for something permissible, and it's something that is not that expensive that you use it exclusively for that, so then you are permitted to make use of it. So just mentioning about the leichter, so the candlesticks, matters what kind you're using. If you're using silver ones, expensive ones, you're going to use it exclusively for lighting the candles. You're not going to use it for anything else. However, you have sometimes they give out those little candlesticks that I haven't seen them recently, but they have it's a little stand. It's made out of cheap metal. They still have them around right now. They still have those. They're about this tall. So you could use it as a stand. If you want to put a tray, you're making a kiddush. You want to have something on a tray, on a stand, make it look fancy. So in that case, if it wasn't used for that Shabbos, so it's just a candlestick that is forbidden to use, it's muktzah. However, you want to use for permissible activity, so you are allowed to use it as a stand for your tray, so that would be permissible. So, however, if it was used at Shabbos and it burnt out, so it's muktzah for the entire Shabbos. Same is also going to be with our fruit. Back to what we're speaking about. The fruit grew on Shabbos. When Shabbos began, you weren't able to eat the fruit because it was attached to the tree, so it's muktzah. Even though it fell down, it's muktzah for the entire Shabbos. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, let's go to our next malach. Let me see if there's anything here that. Okay, one more thing about removing things from the place of growth. So just like we spoke when you're planting, it's not necessarily only in the water, but any place that it's going to promote growth would be forbidden. We gave the example of the avocado, a seed that you put into water, that would be considered planting. Same thing is also, we're going to have the alfalfa, sprouts, beans, those type of things. Considered putting it into water or putting it onto a medium that's going to promote growth is considered planting. Same is also going to be the reverse. Removing from a place of growth is not only from the earth, not only from something that's growing in the earth, or a flower pot that's on the ground with holes, but also from its place of growth. And that would be if you have the plants that are in a liquid, whether it's the sprouts, everyone knows what the sprouts are, like alfalfa, these type of bean sprouts. So if the bean sprouts are in its place of growth, removing them from the place of growth is considered picking, is considered removing. If they are in the refrigerator and you're just keeping them moist so they'll be fresh, so they're not meant to be growing in your refrigerator. Would they grow in your refrigerator? I don't think so. So the bean sprouts that are in the refrigerator, even though they are in a liquid, you could take them out because it's not meant to grow. I don't think they would grow in the refrigerator. It's just there to keep them fresh. Same thing is also going to be with vegetables that you're keeping in water to keep them fresh. They're not growing, so that you're allowed to remove them from the water. If, however, it's meant to be their place of growth, then removing them on Shabbos would be forbidden.
What would happen if like you didn't realize that like they were growing, or like if I don't know, like
So you cannot use them on Shabbos.
okay, or like I don't know, what if like you accidentally like drop seeds into water? Are you allowed to just like quickly move them because they haven't had time to grow, or like?
But what? No, you should remove them. If you did drop those take them, you take them out, later. Right? So they have a time. They have a time of when they will sprout. There's a certain time. You take them before that time, and you prevented them from sprouting. So now we have, so it's a very interesting question, because we spoke about if you go into a room and accidentally open the light, closing the light is not going to undo your opening the light, because you're now doing the second malacha. One malacha is making a light. The other one is undoing a light. They're two separate malachas. One is mavir, making a fire, and mechabe is extinguishing a fire. Two separate malachas. So if someone did accidentally open the light in a room, by closing it, you're doing a second malacha, so you're not undoing it. What your question is, what's the story with seeds? At what point are they considered that you planted the seeds, that by they're considered already growing, and taking them off would be a new malacha? So it's a very, so it is controversial in the halachic authorities, that when does the malacha of planting begin? Is it when you put it down on its place where it could sprout? Is that already considered as if you already planted? Or is it when actually the roots come out and take root? So it's controversial. There are different authorities that would consider it only when the roots come out. Others will say no, when you put it down on the ground. And therefore, the majority accepted ruling is that when they actually sprout. So for seeds that take sprout, it's 3 days for the general seeds. If you have the wheat, those type of seeds. So they do recommend that if you did throw these seeds onto the ground, you should remove them right away. And it's not considered that you're reaping, that you're removing it from its place of growth, because it didn't take place yet. So that's the recommended action to do. And therefore, we have the eating something with seeds in a garden on Shabbos is not recommended, because if you're eating watermelon and a watermelon seed falls on the ground, and you would not know that it's going to take root. So
not like cleaning a plate that has like watermelon seeds on it, because like water could make it sprout.
So
right?
again, so If
Like,
that's not,
they're
if that's not your
printing it out.
intention, if that's not your intention, you could leave it in you could leave it in the seeds on Shabbos, you could leave it in a plate that has liquid in it. That's not your intention to plant. That's not what you're going to be doing. So we would go according to the intention. With the same thing would be also in a garden. One should not have liquids that could promote growth that might spill. So one should be careful when in a garden. It's not recommended to have the liquids or those that have seeds that loose seeds that would fall on the ground. It's interesting that I did, in my house, there's a garden outside, and at one point, we noticed that a watermelon was growing, a little watermelon this big, and it was not planted. It was a place where people normally walk, and there was a watermelon growing, and it did come from someone was eating. I'm sure it wasn't on Shabbos. Someone was eating a watermelon outside, and the seed fell down, and it did take growth, and we had a little watermelon. The only time it grew, and that was it's interesting things that happen that sort of help to to explain things when you actually sometimes it's almost it's really like you speak about its theory. What are the chances of you eating in a garden and you drop a watermelon seed that's going to grow? You would think chances are 1 in 1,000 or whatever it may be, but I've experienced that it actually happens, so I could share it with you. I have different things that happen to me when I'm teaching this class. We was once speaking about that for checking, you'll have that in your other class, checking the vegetables, make sure they don't have worms, flies, these type of things. So I was speaking about the bell peppers. What are the chances of having worms in bell peppers?
Hopefully
Huh?
not. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. So I was teaching and I said to myself, checking bell peppers, what are the chances of finding a worm? And guess what? The next time, this giant worm, you couldn't miss it. But I'm just saying, so sometimes we take them, again, it matters. You see, at one time they used a lot of insecticides. So the chances of having insects was small because the insecticides killed them. But then people were very concerned about the insecticides. As they kill the insects, they also are harmful to one's health. So then they banned many of these insecticides. Because there is a ban on the insecticides, so what happens? Now you do have insects growing more. So you have to be more careful with when you're preparing fruits and vegetables that are susceptible to insects. You have to check them to make sure that you don't. Same thing also happened to me. I was teaching the class also about not only are there insects in fruits and vegetables, but also in fish. They have white worms. Sorry about that. But anyway, so I was teaching the class, and I said to myself, what are the chances in having you're having it in worms? And next time I went to a bris, they had the what is it called? It's a type of fish that's white. What is
Whitefish?
not whitefish, not lox, but it's no. There's slips my mind now. Anyway, it's a white slice of white slices of fish. It's not whitefish. It's a slice, not halibut. No, anyway, I found since I had just taught it, I was looking at it, and sure enough, I found what I was looking for. So many times you teach.
How do we?
You just
Do we
look,
have to check out all
just,
the fish?
no, just saying, you just look, you keep your eyes open.
Was it raw?
But it was raw fish that was like steamed, like smoked. So you just have to keep your eyes open. If you see something unusual, look to see, investigate what it is. So sometimes we speak about things that are that you say to yourself, what are the chances of it happening? But the fact that we learn about it, it is a reality. Yes.
So when you find something, should you throw it?
No, you can just remove. You just remove what doesn't belong there.
If you are cutting lettuce and you find a worm
Mhm.
and the worm touches the knife,
Mhm.
that you have to wash it. The knife.
What you do is with that you would wash it with cold water.
You have
Make sure that you call with cold water. That would be sufficient. They're so small. There's nothing, they'll go. If it is something bigger, it would be you might have to do something to catch it. So. Now the next step after the herbs were cut or plants were cut, or when it comes to wheat, so the next thing would be to gather them together, and the place of gathering would be to then make them into bundles. So this is the next malacha. They would gather and bundle the harvest plants in the place where they grow. So that would include gathering together in a field or a place of growth, in a garden, gathering together fruit, firewood, straw, hay, flowers in their place of growth. That is the place where they are being manufactured. All of this would go into this category. So that's going to be our next topic.
And that's only if it's like where they grow.
The place of growth, right? So what happens if you have a basket of fruits and it tips over on your table? So you are permitted to put your fruit back into the basket because that's not its place of growth. If it would be in the garden where it normally does grow, then it tips over, then you would be restricted not to put them back into their.
If you have like hay, like in your house, like you can like pick it up and put it somewhere else. It's inside. It's not
So,
like growing inside. Like I have a gerbil that like chews on hay,
yes,
so I'd be able to like pick up hay and put it in the cage, right?
yes, you are. So you are permitted to feed your animals. That's your responsibility.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
yes. So you could take the hay and put it in. So yeah, that's
Like,
that's
it's not like bundling it.
no, it's not. No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, let me go through the names again. I'm trying to learn the names once from week to week. Okay, Bina is our class. She's not here today.
Yeah, no,
Bina is.
yeah, you should be here.
she-
Sounds good.
so,
No one on Zoom.
okay, so okay. Circa is, okay, so let me, Circa, Maria, I know, Josephine tomorrow is not here today. She usually sits at the first seat. Anna, I know, and Sarah Mora, I know. And Tova Razel Myers is, okay. Leah Rappaport was sitting there. Okay, Hannah Sternberg was here today, not here. Tehila White, okay. Bracha Sima is here, and Sarah is Sarah Testkin. She was here, yes, I'm just, oh, so yes.
She was in here.
Okay, Chaya is sitting there, and Sophia is here. So let me see the Bracha Sima, let me see again. I'm just going through the names so I can remember them. I'm saying it again to myself. Okay, Bracha Sima, and you are Sophia. Okay, so yes.
Unrelated, but when we're making coffee on Shabbos morning, does it matter if you add the milk or in terms of dyeing? Like,
No,
does that at
that's-
all follow
In other circles, they are concerned about it. In Chabad, it's we say that when it does not, the ruling is that we do not consider dyeing when it comes to food if your purpose is to eat,
So you
eat,
not watch the color.
not to make colors. So making colors would be an issue, but so in other circles, what they would do is they would add the coffee first, then not to put the coffee into the water, but rather first coffee and then the water. So the water is becoming gradually. You're not taking colorless water and dyeing it. As far as putting the milk is, I don't think anyone would. You're just taking the color and you're just making it lighter, but you're not really coloring it. So I think in other circles they would also, but yes.
Isn't permitted to eat pistachios on Shabbos?
Two
Eat pistachios.
pistachios. So There are in Chabad they do not. The reason is because the shell is muktzah. So once it's off, there's an issue. What happens with the shell? So the Alter Rebbe says that to avoid that, the same thing is halachically it is permissible, but the Alter Rebbe recommends to take precaution, especially if you're permitted halachically to crack nuts, even allowed to crack nuts halachically with a hammer. And even though the hammer is used for building, but now you're using to crack nuts, you're allowed to. So if you're going to crack a walnut, you'll have the little pieces there. If you're going to take the shell away from the nut, that itself is a malacha, a borer of selecting, and therefore the Alter Rebbe says the chances of transgressing are so usual. It's fine. Anything that's shelled before Shabbos, that's the recommended thing. Shell everything before Shabbos, then you'll use it. Yeah, right. I'm trying to remember.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a really unrelated, non-Shabbos question.